looked around the massive chamber and felt very small. The Nexus station was the biggest space station she had ever seen. Its walls curved up so high that clouds actually formed near the ceiling. Hundreds of alien beings filled the seats, their strange forms casting weird shadows under the bright lights. She sat at a small table marked with the human symbol, a simple blue circle with white continents. Next to her sat Dr. James, their science advisor, and Colonel Sarah Martinez, their military representative. The three humans looked tiny compared to the massive aliens around them. "Are you ready for this?" James whispered, adjusting his glasses nervously. Nodded, though her stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. Today would decide humanity's future in the galaxy. Either they would join as equals, or something much worse would happen. They sat across from them, looking like giant living crystals. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows across the floor. They had been in space for over 10,000 years. They thought humans were just smart animals who had barely learned to fly between planets. Behind them sat the, so old that nobody remembered when they first reached the stars. They looked like tall, thin trees made of silver metal. Their faces showed no emotion, and they spoke in voices that sounded like wind through leaves. They believed wisdom came only with age, and humans were far too young to have any real wisdom. They took up an entire section with their huge, armored bodies. They looked like bears crossed with tanks, covered in thick plates of natural armor. Red lights glowed from their helmet-like faces. They had conquered dozens of worlds through pure military might. To them, humans were either future soldiers in their armies or obstacles to be removed. Other species filled the remaining seats. They looked like giant squids with too many eyes. They resembled walking mountains of rock. They moved like liquid silver in roughly human shapes. Each species was older, stronger, or more advanced than humanity in some way. Had studied them all for months before coming here. She knew their histories, their technologies, their cultures. What worried her was that they had studied humanity too, and they clearly didn't like what they saw. A deep sound filled the chamber like a giant bell being struck. The talking stopped. High above them, a holographic image appeared, the symbol of the Galactic Confederation. 12 species working together to keep peace in the galaxy. Today, they would decide if humans could join them. Al, the chief ambassador, rose from his seat. His crystal body flashed with internal light as he spoke. His voice came through the translation system, sounding cold and sharp. "We gather today to discuss the human question," he said. "This young species has spread across their local space very quickly. Too quickly, many believe. They show dangerous signs of unpredictability." Felt her hands clench into fists under the table. Unpredictable. That was their word for everything they didn't like about humans. Human creativity, human independence, human refusal to do things the way they had always been done. "Their expansion must be controlled," Al continued. "Their technology must be limited. Their aggression must be contained. We offer them a place in galactic civilization, but only under proper guidance." The representative stood next. Elder was over 3,000 years old, and her silver face showed no expression as she spoke in her whispering voice. "Wisdom comes with age," she said. "These humans have existed for only a few thousand years. They have been in space for less than 100. They are children playing with forces they do not understand. We must teach them to walk before they try to run." Colonel Martinez leaned close to. "They're talking about us like we're not even here," she whispered angrily. Nodded, that was exactly the point. To them, humans weren't really people yet. They were a problem to be solved. War Prime and of the stood, with a sound like metal grinding on stone. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. "The humans are warriors," he declared. "This could be useful, but they are also chaos. They fight each other, they question authority, they refuse to follow proper military order. If they cannot be trained, they must be contained." More aliens spoke. Each one had the same message in different words. Humans were too young, too wild, too dangerous to be trusted with freedom. They needed to be watched, controlled, limited, and taught to behave properly. Listen to each speech with growing anger. They spoke about humanity's dangerous creativity and chaotic innovation. They worried about human emotional instability and unpredictable decision-making. Everything that made humans special, everything that had driven them to the stars, was being labeled as a flaw to be fixed. Doctor passed her a small tablet with notes on it. She read his message. Their technology is more advanced, but it hasn't changed in thousands of years. They're so focused on control that they've stopped growing. Nodded. She had noticed the same thing. The still used the same basic ship designs they had used for centuries. The followed the same trade routes their ancestors had established ago. The fought with weapons and tactics that hadn't evolved in generations. They called it stability, called it stagnation. Finally, Al called for the human response, stood slowly, feeling the weight of every alien gaze upon her. The chamber fell silent. "We thank the Confederation for this opportunity," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation system. "Humanity has come here hopping to join you as partners. We bring new ideas, new perspectives, new energy to your ancient civilization." Some of the aliens made sounds that the translators couldn't convert, probably laughter or scorn. "We understand your concerns," continued. "Yes, we are young. Yes, we do things differently, but we believe our differences could strengthen the Confederation, not weaken it." She looked around the chamber, meeting as many alien gazes as she could. "We offer friendship, cooperation, and mutual respect. We hope you will consider what humanity can contribute, not just what you think we lack." Sat down to complete silence. Then the real discussions would begin. The next morning brought no good news for humanity. Walked into the conference chamber to find that the aliens had been busy during the night. Large holographic displays now showed detailed charts and graphs about human behavior, human technology, and human problems. Doctor pointed to one of the displays as they took their seats. "Look at that," he whispered. "They've been analyzing our entire civilization like we're laboratory specimens." Studied the charts. They showed human crime rates, war statistics, and technological development speeds. Everything was labeled with words like concerning, unstable, and requires correction. Al began the day's session by presenting what he called the Human Integration Protocol. The crystal being's body flashed with confident light as he explained their plan. "We have developed a comprehensive program to help humans join galactic civilization," he announced. "First, all human colonies must accept Confederation oversight. Trained advisors will guide human leaders in proper decision-making." Felt her heart sink as she listened to the details. Human governments would be restructured to match proven stable models used by other species. Human exploration would be limited to approved sectors. Human research would focus only on safe and beneficial technologies. "We understand this may seem restrictive," Al continued, "but consider it as parents guiding children. You will thank us when you are older and wiser." Colonel Martinez gripped the table so hard her knuckles turned white, put a calming hand on her arm. Elder of the Rose next. Her ancient voice carried the weight of as she spoke about human rehabilitation. "Young species often develop bad habits," she explained. "Humans show particularly concerning tendencies toward individual thinking and questioning authority. These behaviors must be corrected early, before they become permanent." She gestured to another hologram that appeared, showing plans for what they called wisdom centers. Realized with horror that they were basically schools designed to teach humans to stop being human. "In these facilities, young humans will learn proper respect for authority," continued. "They will study the mistakes their species has made and learn to avoid them. They will understand why individual desires must always come second to collective stability." Doctor leaned over too. "They want to brainwash our children," he whispered, his face pale with anger. The representative spoke next, her multiple eyes focusing on the human delegation. Her translator made her voice sound wet and slimy. "Human emotions are particularly problematic," she declared. "Humans experience anger, love, fear, and excitement with dangerous intensity. These emotional extremes lead to poor decisions and violent conflicts." She showed brain scans of humans experiencing different emotions, comparing them to the much calmer brain patterns of other species. "We recommend emotional dampening treatments for all humans above the age of physical maturity," she suggested. "This will help them make rational decisions without being clouded by primitive emotional responses." Stood up quickly, unable to stay silent any longer. "You want to remove our emotions?" she asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. The chamber fell silent. Many aliens turned to stare at her outburst, which probably proved their point about human emotional instability. "Not remove," the corrected. "Simply, moderate, reduce them to safe levels. You will still feel happiness and satisfaction, but not the dangerous peaks and valleys that lead to human conflicts." War Priman spoke next, his massive armored form rising like a mountain. His red eyes glowed as he addressed the chamber. "The humans are warriors, but undisciplined warriors," he rumbled. "Their military forces show no proper respect for rank or order. Human soldiers question orders, show individual initiative, and refuse to follow standard tactics." He brought up videos of human military operations, recognized some of them battles where human forces had won against impossible odds through creativity, teamwork, and refusal to give up. "Notice how they deviate from established military doctrine," and pointed out. "They adapt their tactics in the middle of battle. They allow low-ranking soldiers to make strategic decisions. This chaos may occasionally lead to victory, but it makes them unreliable allies." He outlined his plan for integrating human forces into Confederation military structure. All human soldiers would be retrained under alien instructors. Human officers would serve only under alien commanders. Human weapons and ship designs would be replaced with standard Confederation equipment. "In time, they will learn proper military discipline," he concluded. "They will become useful soldiers instead of dangerous." As the day continued, more species presented their own plans for fixing humanity. They wanted to relocate all humans to specially designated worlds where they could be monitored more easily. The proposed genetic modifications to make humans more stable and predictable. Each proposal was presented as being for humanity's own good. They spoke like concerned teachers talking about difficult students who just needed the right guidance to succeed. Tried to speak several times, but each attempt was politely ignored or dismissed. When she pointed out human achievements in science and exploration, they were called lucky accidents or dangerous precedents. When she mentioned human art and culture, they were labeled primitive expressions of an undeveloped species. During a break in the sessions, and her team huddled together in a small side chamber. "They've already made up their minds," Colonel Martinez said angrily. "This isn't a negotiation, it's a sentencing. They're treating us like we're a disease that needs to be cured," Doctor added. "Everything that makes us human is something they want to fix or remove." Looked through the window at the vast space outside the station. Thousands of ships from different species moved in careful, ordered patterns. Everything was controlled, regulated, predictable. "They've been in space for thousands of years," she said quietly. "But look at them. They're not growing anymore. They're not exploring. They're not creating anything new. They've traded progress for stability." "And they want us to do the same," Martinez replied. Nodded. "The question is, do we let them?" When they returned to the chamber, requested permission to present humanity's counter-proposal. After much discussion among the aliens, they agreed to give her 30 minutes. stood before the assembled representatives of 12 species, knowing that her words would determine the future of every human alive. "We have listened to your concerns and your proposals," she began. "We understand that you see us as a young species that needs guidance, but we have a different proposal to offer." She activated her own hologram, showing images of human achievements: the first moon landing, the International Space Station, the first successful faster-than-light journey, cities on Mars and Europa, art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries. "We propose a partnership of equals," declared. "Not guidance but cooperation, not correction but collaboration. We believe our differences can strengthen all of us, not weaken us." The chamber erupted in what could only be described as condescending laughter. Aliens made sounds that the translators rendered as chuckling, giggling, or dismissive snorts. Al's crystal form flickered with what looked like amusement. "Young," he said in a tone one might use with a small child. "Your optimism is charming, but unrealistic. You cannot be partners until you have proven yourselves worthy of partnership." "And how long might that take?" asked. "Perhaps a few centuries," Elder replied casually, "if you show good progress in your rehabilitation." Felt something cold settle in her stomach. A few centuries of being treated like children. A few centuries of having their culture reshaped and their spirits broken. "And if we refuse?" she asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Warprimen stood slowly, his red eyes glowing brighter. "Then you will be contained for the safety of civilized space," he said simply. "The choice is yours, humans. Accept our guidance willingly, or we will ensure you cannot threaten galactic stability through your unpredictability." Looked around the chamber one more time, seeing centuries of stagnation disguised as wisdom, fear disguised as superiority, and control disguised as kindness. The choice was becoming very clear. Barely slept that night. She lay in her small quarters on the station, staring out at the stars and thinking about the ultimatum: accept supervised integration or face immediate containment. Those were humanity's only choices according to the Confederation. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, only 8 years old and full of questions about everything. Would she grow up in a world where asking too many questions was considered dangerous, where creativity was seen as a flaw to be corrected? Early morning brought troubling news. Doctor knocked on her door with urgent information. "You need to see this," he said, handing her a data tablet. "Our intelligence contacts sent this overnight." The tablet showed ship movements around human colonies. Confederation fleets were taking positions near every major human settlement, not attacking, but making their presence known. The message was clear: resistance would be met with force. "How many ships?" asked. "Over 200, replied grimly. "They've been moving into position for weeks. This whole conference was just a formality. They were never planning to let us choose freely." Colonel Martinez joined them in the hallway outside's quarters. Her face was hard with anger. "My contacts in Human Fleet Command are asking for orders," she said. "Our ships are outnumbered 10 to 1, but they're ready to fight if necessary." Closed her eyes for a moment. Humanity had built a small but capable space fleet over the past 50 years. Their ships were newer and more innovative than most alien designs, but there were so few of them compared to the massive Confederation forces. "No fighting yet," she decided. "Let's see if diplomacy has any chance left." But as they entered the conference chamber for the third day, could see that diplomacy was already dead. The aliens had arranged themselves differently, no longer sitting in a circle but forming a wall facing the small human delegation. It looked like a trial where the verdict had already been decided. Al stood without any opening ceremonies. His crystal body pulsed with confident light. "We have prepared the final integration documents," he announced. "All that remains is for the human delegation to sign their acceptance." A holographic contract appeared in the air above's table. She read through it quickly, feeling sick as she saw the details. Human governments would be dissolved and replaced with Confederation-approved councils. Human children over the age of 10 would be sent to alien facilities for proper education. Human technology would be confiscated and replaced with approved alternatives. It wasn't integration. It was the end of humanity as an independent species. "This is unacceptable," said, standing up. "You're asking us to surrender everything that makes us human." Elder's ancient voice whispered through the chamber. "We are asking you to surrender everything that makes you dangerous," she corrected. "Your independence, your creativity, your unpredictability, these things have no place in a stable galactic civilization." "But they're what made us capable of joining you in the first place," Doctor protested. "Human innovation developed faster than light travel in half the time it took most species. Human determination built colonies on worlds others considered uninhabitable." The representative's multiple eyes focused on him with what looked like pity. "And that rapid development proves our point," she said. "You move too fast, take too many risks, ignore too many safety protocols. You are like children running with sharp knives." Looked around the chamber, seeing the faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for. She saw their certainty, their sense of superiority, their complete inability to imagine that they might be wrong. "You keep calling us children," she said quietly. "But maybe the problem isn't that we're too young. Maybe the problem is that you're too old." The chamber fell silent. Several aliens made sounds of shock or offense. Continued, her voice growing stronger. "When was the last time any of your species made a real breakthrough? When did you last explore unknown space or try a completely new idea? You've been doing the same things the same ways for so long that you've forgotten how to grow." Al's light flashed angrily. "We have achieved perfect stability," he declared. "We have eliminated war, crime, and chaos from our civilizations. We offer you the same peace." "You offer us stagnation," replied. "You want us to stop growing, stop questioning, stop reaching for something better. You want us to become like you, safe, stable, and dead inside." War Prime and rose from his seat like an avalanche. His voice boomed through the chamber. "Enough of this defiance," he rumbled. "You will accept integration or you will be contained. Our fleets surround your colonies as we speak. You have no choice." Felt something snap inside her. The pretense of diplomacy was over. They had never intended to offer humanity a real choice. This had all been an elaborate show to make their conquest look legal. She gathered her papers and stood up straight, looking around the chamber one final time. Dr. and Colonel Martinez rose with her, understanding what was about to happen. "You're right," said calmly. "We don't have the choice you're offering us, accept slavery or face destruction, but you've forgotten something important about humans." She picked up her bag and moved toward the exit. The entire chamber watched in stunned silence. "We always find a third option." Al's voice followed her as she walked. "You are making a terrible mistake, Ambassador. Your species will pay the price for your pride." Stopped at the chamber doors and turned back one last time. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space. "Our pride?" she asked. "You sit here in your ancient station, following your ancient rules, thinking your ancient thoughts. You've convinced yourselves that you're wise, but you're just scared. Scared of change, scared of growth, scared of anything that might disturb your perfect, boring peace." She looked directly at each delegation in turn. "We came here believing in diplomacy, hopping for friendship, dreaming of partnership. Instead, we found masters looking for servants. Humanity chooses freedom." As the human delegation reached the doors, War Prime and's voice echoed behind them like thunder. "Your colonies are surrounded, humans. Your ships are outnumbered. Where will you run? How will you hide? We control every hyperspace route and monitor every system. You have nowhere to go." Paused in the doorway without turning around. When she spoke, Her voice was quiet but somehow filled the entire chamber. "You think you know what humans are capable of," she said. "You think you understand our technology, our limitations, our possibilities. You're about to learn how wrong you are." She stepped through the doors, followed by Ann Martinez. Behind them, the chamber erupted in excited alien voices, but the humans didn't look back. As they walked through the station's corridors toward their shuttle, Colonel Martinez asked quietly, "What exactly are we going to do? They weren't wrong about the fleets surrounding our colonies." Smiled for the first time in 3 days. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was confident. "We're going to show them why you should never corner a human," she replied. "They wanted to see what makes us different from them. They're about to get a demonstration they'll never forget." Doctor looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" Activated her communication device and sent a single coded message to Earth. 3 simple words that would change everything. Protocol 7. Execute. As their shuttle detached from Nexus Station and jumped into hyperspace, watched the massive alien station shrink behind them. The Confederation had made their choice. Now they would live with the consequences. The real demonstration was about to begin. Admiral Orr of the 7th Fleet felt confident as his massive warship approached the human colony of New Geneva. His orders were simple. If the humans refused integration, take control of their settlements and hold them until they surrendered. The colony sat on a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. Orbital sensors showed cities with millions of humans, space elevators reaching up from the surface, and orbital platforms bustling with activity. It would be an easy conquest. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "we are detecting no defensive positions around the planet. No orbital weapons, no shield generators, no military installations of any kind." Or nodded with satisfaction. Humans were even more helpless than he had expected. "Transmit our demands," he ordered. "Full surrender within 1 hour, or we begin orbital bombardment of military targets." But before the message could be sent, something impossible happened. The planet simply wasn't there anymore. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice cracked with confusion, I'm not detecting the planet anymore." Or stared at the main display. Where New Geneva had been moments before, there was now empty space. Not destroyed, not hidden behind some kind of shield, just gone, as if it had never existed at all. "Explain this," he growled at his science officer. I cannot, Admiral," the alien replied, his voice shaking. "Our sensors show no debris, no energy signatures, no sign that anything was ever here. The planet, its moons, its orbital stations, everything has simply vanished." Similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems as Confederation fleets arrived at human colonies only to find empty space. New Earth, Olympus Station, the mining platforms of Asteroid Belt 7, all gone without a trace. On the bridge of the Confederation flagship Eternal Harmony, Fleet Commander Ra of the tried to make sense of the reports flooding in from her task forces. 17 colonies gone, her aide reported. No destruction, no evacuation trails, no hyperspace signatures. They've simply ceased to exist. Ra's liquid silver form rippled with uncertainty. In 3,000 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. Planets didn't just disappear. "What about their space fleet?" she asked. "Also gone, Commander. Every human ship we were tracking has vanished from our sensors. It's as if their entire civilization has been erased from the galaxy." Back on Nexus Station, the Confederation leadership gathered in emergency session. The confident mood of the morning had turned to confused panic. Al's crystal form flickered erratically as he tried to understand the reports. "How does an entire species disappear?" he demanded. "Where are our intelligence analysts? What do they know about human capabilities?" Elder's ancient voice carried a note of uncertainty for the first time in centuries. Our studies showed no technology capable of this, she whispered. Human science was advanced for their age but still primitive compared to ours. They couldn't simply leave reality. Warprime slammed his armored fist on the table, cracking the metal surface. This is some kind of trick, he roared. They're hiding somewhere, probably in secret bases outside our sensor range. We'll find them and drag them back to face justice. But as the hours passed, it became clear that this was no ordinary hiding tactic. Human ships began appearing sporadically throughout Confederation space, but not where they were expected. A human exploration vessel materialized inside the supposedly impregnable home system, transmitted a brief message, then vanished before the defense fleet could respond. Human cargo ships appeared at major trade stations, conducted business, and disappeared again before authorities could react. The messages they left behind were always the same. You wanted to see what makes humans different. Now you understand. We are not gone, we simply choose not to be found. Doctor, the Confederation's chief scientist, worked frantically to understand what was happening. The elderly had spent his life studying space-time physics, but nothing in his knowledge could explain human capabilities. They're not using hyperspace, he reported to the Emergency Council. They're not using any form of faster-than-light travel we recognize. Our sensors detect them arriving, but never leaving. It's as if they step outside the normal flow of space-time entirely. That's impossible, Al insisted. The laws of physics don't allow such things. Clearly they do, replied grimly. We just never learned how to break them. The economic impact hit the Confederation within days. Human colonies had been major suppliers of rare minerals and advanced electronics. Human traders had carried goods between systems that now found themselves cut off from essential supplies. Entire trade routes became unreliable as human vessels appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Military commanders found themselves unable to plan for threats they couldn't track or predict. Human ships could appear anywhere, at any time, without warning. Strategic positions became meaningless when the enemy could bypass all defenses simply by stepping outside normal space. On the third day after humanity's disappearance, something even more unsettling happened. A single human appeared in the center of the Confederation Council chamber, materializing out of thin air as if she had always been there. She stood calmly in the middle of the circle, wearing simple diplomatic clothing and showing no signs of stress or fear. The alien representatives around her jumped to their feet in alarm, but she remained perfectly still. "How did you get in here?" Al demanded, his crystal form blazing with light. "This station has the most advanced security systems in the galaxy." Smiled sadly. "Security systems designed to keep out threats that follow the same physical laws you do," she replied. "We don't." Warprime reached for his weapon, but continued speaking without concern. "You're wondering how we did this," she said. "How we made entire planets disappear. How we can appear and vanish at will. The answer is simple. We learned something you never thought to learn." "Which is?" Elder asked, her ancient voice barely above a whisper. "We learned how to think outside the box you've trapped yourselves in," replied. "For thousands of years, you've followed the same rules, used the same technologies, thought the same thoughts. You became so focused on controlling what exists that you never learned to step beyond existence itself." Doctor leaned forward eagerly. "You're talking about dimensional transcendence," he said. "The theoretical ability to step outside normal space-time, but that's impossible with any known technology." "Impossible with your technology," corrected. "But humans have always been good at making the impossible possible. While you were perfecting what you already knew, we were discovering what you thought couldn't be discovered." She gestured around the chamber. "You wanted to limit our exploration, control our research, stop us from taking risks. You were afraid we might discover something dangerous. You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you thought." Al's light pulsed frantically. "What do you want?" he demanded. His expression became serious. "We want you to understand what you've lost," she said. "You had a chance to learn from us, to grow beyond the limitations you've accepted for so long. Instead, you chose to try to make us like you, stagnant, fearful, controlled." She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each representative. "We offered you partnership among equals," she continued. "You demanded our submission to your authority. Now you understand the difference between us. You see the universe as something to be controlled. We see it as something to be transcended." Began to fade like morning mist, her outline becoming transparent. "The invitation still stands," she said as her voice grew distant. "But the terms have changed. You wanted to be our teachers. Now you need to become our students." As she disappeared completely, her final words echoed through the silent chamber. "Think about it." The Confederation representatives sat in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand that they hadn't been dealing with a primitive species that needed guidance. They had been facing something far beyond their comprehension, a species that had learned to step beyond the very laws they thought governed reality. For the first time the masters of the galaxy realized they had much to learn. 3 months after the Day of Vanishing, as historians would later call it, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Confederation still existed, but its absolute authority was gone. In its place was uncertainty, fear, and something the ancient species had forgotten how to feel: humility. Commander of the Trade Authority stood on the bridge of his merchant vessel, staring at empty space where the human cargo ship Wanderer had been just moments before. They had been in the middle of negotiations for rare earth minerals when the human captain simply said, "We'll think about it," and vanished along with his entire ship. "This is the 4th time this week," his second-in-command reported. "Human traders are appearing for brief meetings, then disappearing before we can finalize any deals." His crystal form dimmed with frustration. The economy depended on materials that human colonies had provided. Without those resources, their manufacturing sectors were beginning to shut down. But humans now only traded when and where they chose, and their choices seemed completely random. Similar problems plagued every Confederation species. They found their ancient trade routes disrupted as human ships appeared in supposedly empty space, offering better prices for goods they had monopolized for centuries. They discovered their military plans being leaked to their enemies, apparently by invisible human observers who could watch their most secure facilities without being detected. Most unsettling of all were the exploration reports. Human ships were being spotted in regions of space that should have taken years to reach. They appeared in distant galaxies, around black holes, inside star systems that no known technology could survive. It was as if physical distance had become meaningless to them. Doctor had spent every waking hour since the conference trying to understand human technology. His laboratory on the research station Deep Thought was filled with failed experiments and theoretical models that explained nothing. "The energy signatures make no sense," he explained to his research team. "When human ships appear, they don't arrive from anywhere. They simply begin existing where they weren't before. When they disappear, they don't go anywhere. They simply stop existing in our reality." His assistant, a young named Flo, rippled with confusion. "But Master, that violates every law of physics we know. Matter and energy cannot simply appear and disappear." "That's what I thought too," the old scientist replied sadly. "But perhaps our laws are more like suggestions. Perhaps humans have learned to ignore the rules we thought were absolute." The political changes were even more dramatic than the technological ones. The Confederation Council met in constant emergency session, trying to deal with problems they had no experience solving. Worlds that had been obedient for centuries were beginning to question Confederation authority. If humans could simply opt out of galactic civilization, why couldn't others? War Prime and found himself in the unprecedented position of commanding military forces that could not guarantee victory against any opponent. His massive fleets were useless against enemies that could appear and disappear at will. "We cannot fight what we cannot find," he admitted to the council. "We cannot defend against attacks that come from outside space itself. Our military doctrine assumed that all threats would follow the same physical laws we do." Elder, for the first time in her 3,000-year life, admitted uncertainty. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we have been wrong about the nature of wisdom. We thought it came from age and experience. But these young humans have shown us possibilities we never imagined." The breaking point came when a human delegation appeared in the council chamber exactly 6 months after his disappearance. But this time, it wasn't just who materialized. A dozen humans appeared around the chamber, each one representing a different human colony or organization. They sat down in chairs that hadn't been there moments before, at a table that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. Was among them, but now she wore clothing that seemed to shift between different states of matter. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying strange harmonics that seemed to come from several directions at once. "We have returned to discuss the future of human confederation relations." Al's crystal form flickered nervously. What do you want from us?" Smiled, and for a moment she looked like the same diplomat who had sat at their table months before. "We want to offer you the same thing we offered before partnership, but the terms have necessarily changed." She gestured, and holographic displays appeared around the chamber. But these weren't ordinary holograms. They showed images from across the Galaxy Confederation worlds, human colonies that shouldn't exist, and strange new structures that seemed to bend space around them. "We have learned much in our time away," continued. "We have explored dimensions you never knew existed. We have discovered forms of energy that transcend your physics. We have made contact with intelligences that exist beyond the boundaries of normal space-time." Doctor leaned forward eagerly. "The scientific implications alone," he began. "Are vast," agreed. "Which is why we're here. We're offering to share our discoveries, but only under new terms." She looked around the chamber, her gaze touching each representative in turn. "No more supervision, no more guidance, no more attempts to control or limit human development. We offer partnership between equals, true equals this time." War Prime stood slowly. "And if we refuse?" His expression became sad. "Then you will continue as you have for stable, safe, and slowly dying. Your civilizations will endure, but they will never grow beyond what they are now. Meanwhile, humanity will continue to explore, to discover, to transcend." She gestured again, and new images appeared. They showed incredible structures, space stations that existed in multiple dimensions, ships that traveled by stepping outside reality itself, worlds where humans lived alongside beings of pure energy. "This is what we've built in just 6 months," said. "Imagine what we might accomplish in a century or a millennium. Imagine what you could accomplish if you learned to think beyond your limitations." Elder spoke in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. "What would you require of us?" "Open minds," replied simply. "The willingness to learn instead of control, the courage to grow instead of stagnating, the wisdom to admit that you don't know everything." The chamber fell silent as the alien representatives considered their options. They could refuse and continue their slow decline into irrelevance, or they could accept that the young, chaotic humans they had tried to control were now their teachers. Was the first to speak. His crystal form pulsed slowly as he chose his words carefully. "What you offer, it goes against everything we have believed for thousands of years." "Yes," agreed, "that's exactly the point." "It would mean admitting that our way is not the only way," added. "Also true." "It would change everything about how our civilizations work," and rumbled. "Everything," confirmed. The question is, do you want to change or do you want to be left behind? One by one, the alien representatives began to nod. Not all of them. Some species would choose isolation rather than adaptation. But enough of them understood that the galaxy had changed forever, and they could either change with it or be forgotten by it. Stood and the other human delegates rose with her. "The offer stands," she said. "When you're ready to learn, we'll be ready to teach. When you're ready to grow, we'll show you how to transcend the limitations you've accepted for so long." As the humans began to fade from view, spoke one final time. "We told you once that we always find a third option. The first option was submission to your authority. The second was isolation from your influence. The third option is transformation for all of us." She paused, her form becoming translucent. "Thank you for forcing us to find it." The humans vanished, leaving behind only a small device on the table where they had sat. It projected a simple message in every known language. "When you are ready to begin, speak our names to the stars. We will hear you wherever we are." The age of human guidance had begun, though it would take the ancient species some time to realize that their students had become their teachers. The galaxy would never be the same again, and for the first time that was a good thing. The universe was vast and full of mysteries. Now, finally, someone was willing to explore them all.